Hello, it's Andy. I'm on Bodmin Moor and I'm just heading up a few tracks that wind up onto the moor proper. Now, I'm going to have a little chat about a little, shall we say, folklore or phenomena or natural occurrence, whichever way you may look at it, is associated with Bodmin Moor. And we'll have a little chat about it. And my thoughts and views on it and a little story to go alongside it. As you can see, there are gates and people do frequent this particular track quite a lot, and it is actually a work track for a quarry and shall we say the farming community. So there are people around certain areas and aspects of this moor, but you can veer off and start finding, shall we say, little pockets of isolation, which is what I'm going to do now. The quality of the actual ground is not that, shall we say, productive for farming. That is why any cattle and sheep are pretty much left to roam over this enclosed whole area. That is pretty much, I suppose, so they can get the nutrition through a larger area. But that in itself means a lot of the area is not travelled by, should we say, humans on footfall that often. And as if by magic, a sheep skull has just appeared on a wall. Well, not appeared, it was there as I walked along this little bit of a track. And it's quite apt considering I'm going to be talking about the beast of Bodmin Moor. This terrain is getting quite difficult now, and you would have to be reasonably fleet on your feet to negotiate all this. Yeah, and as beautiful as this looks, it does mean you're not going to get heavy footfall in these areas, and you can quite happily imagine the beast of Bodmin Moor would make full use of this ground, as it's not, shall we say, used extensively for human, shall we say, agriculture or recreational use. There's been plenty of rain just recently, and as you can see by this nice little cascade or waterfall, it is now making its way down through the valleys and down to the other rivers. I'm going to get across here and find somewhere to have a little talk. I have a very curious sheep there just looking at me, and doesn't seem too concerned, so I shall find a nice little place here. Well, there he goes, and I shall sit down and have a little chat. The beast of Bodmin Moor is said to be a feline creature, sort of like puma sized or lynx sized. And it's said to, well, it has been reported from colours ranging from jet black right the way through to a sandy colour. That would suggest, if you take it on that sort of value, that there's possibly more than one or two of these creatures out there, because of the sheer range of colours that it's been reported in or cited in those varying colour schemes. Now, you then have to question, if there's more than one, is it a breeding population? If it's a breeding population, why aren't we seeing more? The other interesting fact is that Bodmin Moor is not a standalone, shall we say, regular sighting place for this particular type of creature. Exmoor has its very own, shall we say, the Beast of Exmoor, and we also have Dartmoor, which is far more vast and remote in places than Bodmin Moor or Exmoor. and that has had many sightings of feline creatures. Now, if you were to, shall we say, go from the far extremities of Exmoor, Dartmoor and Bodmin Moor and draw a line between them, you would end up with a rough triangle, and within that triangle is where you would possibly, and I believe is correct, most of the sightings within the southwest would fall quite happily within that, shall we say, triangle. And if that's the case, that would then give you a strong argument that that is the actual range of these creatures. They would, in theory, be using the moorlands as areas to possibly live and, shall we say, shelter, but using the lower valleys to possibly hunt deer, hare, rabbits and species like that, which are in abundance within the valleys in between the three moors, and indeed the valleys inside the moors themselves. The high ground is dominated by the slightly larger deer species, but I would suggest, just on face value of what the information that is out there, that they would be targeting the smaller deer species like muntjac and obviously hares, rabbits, and, shall we say, possibly livestock, as in regards to lambs and the smaller, shall we say, animals of that nature like the youngborns. You then sort of like have to start then looking at how come the farming community have not fully, shall we say, demonstrated that there is an animal or animals out there that are taking their stock. Well, the government agencies for rural affairs and agricultural matters and the alike did actually commission a search by outside agencies to see if there was enough evidence to support a feline, or indeed, shall we say, capture one, shoot one, or confirm there was, shall we say, something out here taking livestock. And that was based on the local farming community, landowners and of the like, saying that, you know, they were reaching a point they wanted something done, or at least investigated. Now, the results came back, shall we say, inconclusive whether there is anything out here, and I think the overriding suspicion amongst, shall we say, most people who were involved in that, shall we say, search, was that there was nothing out here. But we're still in a position where sightings are happening, and there's evidence of livestock, shall we say, being taken, albeit young ones. And we still find carcasses which people state that are taken in a manner which isn't of the natural British wildlife manner. Now, whatever you think or believe, you know, could a creature still remain elusive on these moors? Bodmin Moor, shall we say, in question, let alone the other two. Most people will possibly say that that would not be the case in this day and age with, shall we say, the hunting community having access to thermal imaging, night vision in itself, which would have been out of most people, well, definitely most people's pockets a few years back. But as with everything, technology creeps down from military use, becomes cheaper, the hunting community then accept and use it, and prices fall. And yet we're still not seeing any evidence of these cats captured by those images. Well, there is another school of thought. The UK, indeed Britain, is becoming extremely urban. The, shall we say, hunting community isn't growing, shall we say, in line with the population, and the areas that are being used to harvest deers and possibly foxes, which night vision and your likes would be being used, aren't really encroaching any much more land. If anything, it's diminishing land due to the fact that hunting has not got that, shall we say, PR that is required for it to, shall we say, grow to any more potential than where it already is. So you still have vast tracts of land where people are not using full bore rifles with that technology on. If you're out hunting with shotguns and the like, obviously you don't have thermal imaging for, you know, identifying that species you're going to take. You might have it just to scan around and see what quarry is available, but yet again, most shotgun users out rough shooting would not have that and would not deem that as sporting. Now, that then brings you to the question that there still is that opportunity for these creatures in this day and age to still be out there. And as I've said, you have to make your own mind up on that, just based on the evidence that you can research yourself. But just coming to places like this, there are corridors that these creatures could move between the moors, avoiding the big cities and towns. There's enough, shall we say, evidence to suggest that could possibly be the case, and would have to be the case for a large creature or creatures to be able to maintain a population. They would have to be mobile, and they would have to use the resources that would be open to them in one area and then move to another area to use those resources. Will we ever find out if there is a creature up here, a feline creature? I personally don't think we will, because like I've just said to you, we're becoming increasingly urban, and even when we go into the outdoors, we are usually following tracks and paths and very rarely going into the swampy, marshy, out of the way areas, the bits the farmers fence off because they don't want their cattle to go in. And I'm pretty sure these creatures would be, by their very nature, if they were feline, like I said, puma or lynx, they would deliberately seek to not be in full view in, like, you know, in the open. They would be skulking in the shadows, in the out of the way places, creeping along the hedgerows, over in around the bush and everything like that. So I believe there's still the opportunity out there for something to exist. There is another school of thought that could it be dogs, from, shall we say, farm dogs that have gone amiss, or like individual, shall we say, public members who've got dogs that go missing, or just, shall we say, find their way up onto the moor, or indeed into the valleys and take wildlife or a young lamb or something like that. That's not really been proved. It is a theory that it could possibly be, shall we say, that a domesticated dog just returning back to what its canine ancestors would have done. But as with the aforementioned cat, that theory is still to be proved. You can quite clearly see the sheep tracks that have gone along this path here, and it's well used. It does open up the argument that there would be more tracks. Tracks have been, shall we say, suggested or pointed out that they could possibly be feline. but it's yet again, it's also vague and sketchy, and you would suspect that more of that kind of evidence would exist. And like I said, just me myself here, just looking around these tracks, you have to wonder, let's say, why there is not more evidence coming forward. From up here, I'm just going to scan around, and as you look, you can see there is still corridors something could move around. Whether it is yet again up to you, but I would strongly suggest there is the possibility, and I wouldn't discount it out of hand. Right, getting back to that story, I worked in a factory many years ago, and I worked alongside another guy there. Well, and he was slightly younger than me, but he was really enthusiastic about his hunting. Naturally, we talked a little bit about it on our breaks, and then in the end he sort of invited me to go out shooting with him at his place, and it was out near St Breward. Now, I went there, he showed me around his haunts, and he did actually tell me while I was there that his grandmother, who lived reasonably close to him, her kitchen window overlooked a valley. Now this valley, shall we say, was quite remote, and it was sort of like covered in heather, shall we say, thorn bushes, ferns and things like that. But she did see a large black feline creature move along the lower part of the valley and then descend up and then disappear into all the undergrowth. Now, this lady had nothing to gain by making a story up. The friend of mine, shall we say, had nothing to gain by sensationalising a story. And indeed, it was all kept pretty much, shall we say, hush hush, quiet quiet, but just, you know, just told as just a little bit of a story. There was no sensationalism with it. There was no, shall we say, being followed, seen it doing this, seen it doing that, it was hunting, it was stalking me, there was this, that and the other going on. No, there was nothing of that. It was just a sighting, pure and simple. Now, I suggest that a lot of people who, you know, may have seen something or get carried away with themselves, and I've got no hesitation in saying that, but there's a lot of people out there who genuinely believe what they've seen is what they've seen, as my friend's grandmother, and there was no reason for her to have embellished a story or anything like that. So, you know, taking that on face value from a local, and I'm talking true proper local, you have to give it some credence. Even if you just want to go along with the theory that, you know, there could have been an escaped, should we say, cat of some description, you know, large cat, you know, out doing its thing, and it's long since perished and gone on the moors. You know, just go along with that theory. You know, you have to give that story some credence. But I would strongly suggest there's a lot of people that may have seen things. Keep it roughly to themselves and don't embellish it. And, you know, it just keeps that little bit of fire burning for this particular myth, folklore, legend, if you will, or even if it is a real, you know, entity out there doing its thing, yet still to be, shall we say, caught on camera and fully documented. The people that have seen it, as I've just described, you have to give them some degree of credibility. I have to add, I've not seen anything, and I'm walking on these moors, the footpaths, the fields, the valleys, the lanes at all times of days. Through my own miscalculations, my hikes sometimes go extremely wrong, and I do end up in the more remoter parts of this county of Cornwall that I'm in. And that being said, I've not seen anything. I've heard a lot of strange noises, and you can probably put that down to muntjac deer or foxes, or even birds themselves. But at the end of the day, it's still a mystery, and there has been occasions I've, particularly in the dark and been traipsing along, I thought, I just wonder if there is something actually watching me that I don't actually know what it is. But that is just as far as it goes. I have not seen anything. And that story has stayed with me, and I do think about it. And like I said, there was never any reason for an old lady to embellish a story. So I possibly do believe there could be something out here. And till it's proved for definite there isn't, I shall probably continue to do so.